Hello, this is John Claiborne with the Bashful Puppet blog, and now we're ready to begin showing you how to dye the mouth plate. And for this project, I'm in my kitchen today rather than in the blog, and we've got some things assembled here. It's kind of hard to see, but one, we've got a glass pie plate. Basically, you need a nice flat container that is big enough so that your piece, whatever you're dyeing, can lie flat in it. And then over here I have two glass bread baking pans that I can use later as rinse water, and I'll rinse one then the other. Now what you need to do to start with is to take some very hot water. I'm using some water that I just boiled. You can see the steam coming off of it there. Very hot. And put enough in there so that there will be plenty to saturate your piece that you're working with. You can also use same dye. I'm using grit dye. This is the Scarlet or Rojo, and I'm just going to take and pour. I'm not measuring it. That ought to be enough, just a dribble. I think I put in maybe a tablespoon or so. One thing you need to know is that this stuff is a dye, and that it will dye whatever you put into it. There are some things that won't dye, but it will dye your fabric. It will dye, at least stain any plastic. That's why I'm using glass. And the stainless steel knife that I'm using to stir that with, it's stainless, so we shouldn't have any problem with that staining because of the dye. Alright, now we're ready to take our piece. One tool that I have here to protect myself is some little grabby tongs. So all we do is drop that in, set it in, pull it out. Not really as dark as I want it. Some people worry that they won't get the right concentration, and here's the truth, is that if it's not a dark enough red, which this isn't yet, you just leave it in there a little longer, and eventually it will, enough dye will get into either the cloth or the foam that you're dyeing to get the color you want. If you're more impatient, you can of course add more dye to your bath. The hot water helps it set right into the fabric right away. It's getting close, pretty close to acceptable. I want a nice rich red. This particular dye will make your will dye things very, very deep red. Flipped it over here so I can see what color it is by itself. It's getting very close. And once we're done, once we've achieved the color we want, we'll take it and rinse it out. And once I've rinsed out enough, I'll take it and just run it under the sink. But initially, since there's so much dye in here, I don't want to stain my white sink. So, alright, there we go. I think I like that color. So now, shake it so that it's not dripping anymore by itself. And this is cold water, so I'm not afraid to reach my hand into it. See it turn that a little bit pink. And this one comes out, and here almost didn't change the rinse watercolor at all. So it's basically rinsed out. I'm going to take this, move it onto my sink, and continue rinsing it out, and then we'll let it dry. Oops. Then we'll be able to begin assembling our puppet, the foam part of our puppet, now that we have the mouth colored. And that's how you dye your foam. If you're wanting to dye larger pieces of foam, which you certainly can, some people dye their whole puppet and use that instead of covering it with fabric, as I've done. But you can do that, perfectly acceptable. You just need to make sure that you have a container that's large enough so that you can lay whatever pieces you're going to put in there flat. And you should be able to do however you want. Also, the bigger it is, the more precautions you'll have to take as far as spilling is concerned. All right, now I'm just going to throw this dye out. I'll probably dump the dye into the toilet. I'm not worried about it staining that. And continue rinsing this until it's perfectly clean. Then we'll let it dry, and then we'll begin assembling the puppet together. All right, this is another segment for the Bashful Puppet blog, and I'm John Claiborne. Happy puppet building.